Thanks for joining us today. For me, it's evening. We're going to run through our P6-Loader, and this is our version 12 P6-Loader. So we've got some interesting new features to let you know about. I'm joining you today from Montreal, and I'm Nicole Jardin, usually in Calgary, but in Montreal today. And I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. And doing the heavy lifting is Sue Familia, coming to you from Wyoming in the US. And she's an implementation specialist with Emerald and expert on using P6-Loader. So she's helped migrate lots of clients from different databases to one, cleanups, and moving people up to the Oracle P6 cloud. We've done a lot of that, and moving them into our cloud environment, merging multiple databases, things like that. So she will be able to give you lots of insight on different ways that we've used the software. Now, let me touch on why we built P6-Loader. Okay, so P6 is a fantastic software tool, excellent platform for planning, developing your schedules, your portfolios. But like any software, there's still struggles that we face, okay? Administering P6, making sure lists are loaded and things like that. They can take a bit of time if you have to do things manually. So why we built P6-Loader is so that we could be more efficient, so that we could get at data, different data elements in P6 more efficiently. That's essentially why we built it. And the nice thing about it is that goes beyond importing and exporting, because we can import, we can export from P6. But what we found is you can't access all the data that we want to administer. So that's really why we've built the P6-Loader. So let's just, I wanted to ask a quick question, but I can't figure out what I'm doing. Which question here? Let's ask this question. How do you deal with global lists? Okay, so if you've been using P6 for a while, you have lists that are shared. These are global codes, global UDFs, things like that. So keeping them clean is one of the big challenges that we find when we've got lots of different groups. So I thought I'd ask this question to see how you, in your team, are dealing with keeping codes clean. Do you keep them clean? Do you have some struggles keeping values and things like that up to date, and or are they really all over the map? Okay, so that's just a quick question if you want to go ahead and answer it. And for those of you who may not know, we do share all these polls on our website. On the different tools pages, we've got all the polls that we've run, and it gives you some insight. Oh, so someone just answered they don't use codes. Well, that's interesting. So that's something that we can definitely touch on, because I think codes are one of the fantastic parts of P6. Okay, so doesn't look like too many people wanted to answer the poll, but that's all right. We'll keep going. So administering P6, so that's the codes that we were talking about, or calendars, or resources. All those items that we frame our schedules around can be a little challenging or time consuming to administer if you're doing them manually. So with P6-Loader, we can access, I'd say 99.99% of the data in P6. So not just projects and activities, but every different piece of P6. And Sue will show you some examples when she runs through live examples of different things that you can do in P6-Loader. Now, those are going to be food for thought, because there's so many things that you can do. Now, developing a schedule. So some of you may have lists of activities coming from other systems, and you may not have an integration. So pulling a list out into Excel, maybe from SAP, for example, or JD Edwards or Oracle Fusion, or even having your engineering team create a list in Excel, for example. So developing the schedule can be very time consuming as well. So being able to share or have other people make lists and then load them up is a huge, huge time saver. And P6-Loader lets you load across multiple projects in the same spreadsheet. Okay, that's a huge advantage over the basic out-of-the-box capability of importing. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. It's truly multi-project and multiple pieces of data that can be in one sheet. Okay, so very, very flexible. It makes doing things much quicker. Okay, and administering data. Okay, so I touched on maybe your data needs to come from another source. It could be another system. It could be a person using something as simple as Excel, as I mentioned. So being able to manage that and move it. Usually everything can be exported into a CSV or an Excel format, if you will. So Excel becomes a very good framework for administering and moving data. So that's a key thing. And the other thing that we have used P6-Loader for is increasing team engagement. So being able to get lists out into Excel, which maybe somebody uses just to have a list of their work. Maybe they're an inspector and they want just a list of their work. Or perhaps it's a third-party vendor that needs to have some dates that you need to get to them. Okay, so this is where getting the data in and out much more readily goes a long way. Now, of course, what we're trying to do is bump up the consistency inside of P6 across the different projects within a program or a portfolio. And this is another thing that P6-Loader really helps you with, is to bump up the way that people are doing things in a common, consistent manner, making sure you're sharing codes. So codes really allow you to do what I call tagging and bagging all the data inside P6. So let's just say you have a vendor that provides all your equipment across multiple projects. You want to tag that they're responsible for perhaps delivering and installing that equipment. And then you can run metrics on how they're doing on each of your projects. So that's where a code can be hugely valuable. So if you're not using codes, I think you're missing out on a lot of strength of P6. So it's something definitely to explore. Okay. Now let's take a look at, let me explain a bit of how it works. And then Sue is actually going to show the software to you live and in action. Okay. So let's talk about deploying it. So P6-Loader works with the web services or API of P6. So what that means is it adheres to P6 security. It can be deployed inside your company's environment. It could be in our cloud with your P6 inside your environment, or they can be up in the cloud together, either in our cloud, or you might have P6 in the Oracle cloud and the loader in our cloud. So there's lots of different ways you can deploy it. So in terms of technology, no real worries or concerns there in terms of how you can deploy it. In terms of the other types of importing and exporting tools out on the market, what you're going to find is P6-Loader is by far the most elaborate and with the most functionality. Okay, so if some of you use XCRs and you read and write and change XCRs, which you're not supposed to, that is doable, but these are these are sort of the other tools out on the market, and by far P6-Loader is the strongest because of the different elements that we're able to do. So as I said, we can touch just about all the data in the system. Okay, so I think that's probably a good enough intro. Let's go ahead and I'll turn it over to Sue, and she'll run through in detail how the software works. And she'll give you real live examples.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can take a look at the software itself. Okay. So with P6-Loader, as Nicole mentioned, we use the API or web services to connect to your database. This means that we can actually point to several different databases if you have multiple databases in your organization. So essentially, you would pick the database just like you would with P6 and log in accordingly to uh, that database so that you could touch that data. Now, one thing to note that the security, because it goes through the API and web services, the security within P6 is adhered to. So it's respected by P6-Loader. So if you have a user who does not have access to touch, let's say, global data or user data, they are unable to actually change that and work with it within P6 loader as well. So the first place that I want to go is just our extraction screen. This is actually a really good place to kind of start to find out what P6 loader, the type of information that P6 loader can provide for you. So as we mentioned, user information. So anything from the security profiles to the users to assigning those OBS or the responsible manager for those users. We have global information. So OBS, EPS, project and activity codes, UDFs or user defined fields, cost accounts, calendars. I mean, we really just have everything pretty much covered in the way of accessing that data and being able to work with it. We also have roles and resource topics that can be dealt with. We have risk information if you use risk in P6, any of the risk features. Um, I'm going to come back to this usage in just a moment and address those. Your project information, including baselines. We can pull out baseline information and data, manipulate it, and load it back in without having to detach that baseline in your in P6 and be able to work with it still. And then, of course, we have our activity information, those resource assignments, the expenses, steps, things of that nature. Um, so before I go over and talk about the project area, I'm going to talk a little bit about usage sheets. So we have some sheets and some functionality that you can utilize in P6 to help, I guess, keep your database clean or to essentially bring out informational data about um, or information about your data. So you can find out on usage sheets where a piece of data, say an activity code, is being used in your database, which project it's being used in, if it's being used at all, and how many times. So this really is essential and great data for you to utilize when you are trying to clean up a database. You know, as a database gets older and you've run more and more projects into it and created them and all that, you tend to get some data that kind of gets a little messy. These are sheets that are going to help you out with that. It's going to identify where these data pieces have been used, and perhaps you might find out where you could either clean them up, maybe delete them if they're not being used at all. Or we also have uh, two other utilities that one of them is our activity code roll down. So you can take activity codes, you can combine them. Let's say you have duplicate lists and they need to be combined, but you still want to maintain that data in your projects. You could do that, or you can push them down. In P6, you can roll them up. You can promote them, but you cannot demote them. We give you that ability to demote them as well. And then you can also do that with calendars. So on the right hand side here, these are all the projects that are in the database that you're connected to. So essentially, this is your EPS structure, and you can go and you can drill down and take a look at what you have. You also have a search function up here on both sides. So, of course, if you're dealing with project information, you're going to need to identify a project or projects, several, if that's what you want to work with. So let's say I wanted to look at my demo, all of my demo projects for my P6 loader. I could select my EPS and it's going to select all those projects, but maybe I decide I only want to have two of those projects come out, or perhaps just one. So I can choose whether I want one or multiple projects and work with those in my um, in my sheet when I get them pulled out. So, the first example I want to do is that we have a lot of like engineering contractors who have, you know, several different databases for each client. The reason being is they want to kind of silo that data. They don't want any information being seen by other users in any way, shape, or form. So they spin up databases for their new clients, and having to set up EPS structures, users, security profiles, things like that can be quite tedious and time consuming. Now, with P6-Loader, I'm going to show you an example where I'm going to take a database that already exists and I'm going to pull out the EPS and the OBS structures. And then on a database that I've spun up that's completely clean. Here I don't have an OBS structure, nor do I have an EPS structure. I'm going to utilize the EPS structure from that other database to create one in this brand new um, database that I'm creating or that I'm building right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the database that I'm in already, and I'm going to just select the OBS and the EPS structures. And I'm going to tell P6-Loader to extract those. Now it's going to go out, it's going to run it, and when it's done, it's going to tell me it's completed, and I can download that. It's going to go and it's going to open it in Excel for me, and I'm going to be able to now see the data. So a little bit of lay of the land, I guess, on these sheets. Now you can see I have one tab for each one of the modules that I selected, one for my OBS and one for my EPS. So each module will come out in its own tab. Now, on the sheet itself, when it is pulled out, it's going to kind of help coach you a little bit on this sheet. So for my OBS, I can see that I have a red column here. The background is red. That red column indicates that this is a required column to have when I am working with my OBS structure. Now I have some other colors in here as well. I have in column D, I have kind of an orangish color. What that is indicating is that this is a renaming or remapping column for my required piece of data that's next to it or with the same name. So if I wanted to rename my OBS, I could put that new name next to the name that I want to rename, or next to the name I want to rename it. And then when I load it back in, it's going to rename that let's say, for example, this EAI, and it's going to name it whatever else I decide to call it. Now, in the gray columns, These are informational columns. Um, on all sheets, we have a last modification kind of general area that's going to show you about creation and last update for that piece of information. In some of our other sheets, we do have summary data. So some of that summary data that is at, let's say, the project level comes out in an informational column as well so that you can see that. However, you can't change any of it because it is something that's calculated, it's put in there automatically, but sometimes it's nice to have it on a sheet. So if you do have those and you really don't need them and you're not utilizing them, you could certainly take them and you could remove them from your sheet. Not going to hurt anything. Now, the blue columns are columns that can be edited, created, and in this case, they've been pulled out. So again, these are optional columns. So if I'm not working with the data in these columns, I could certainly remove them. So let's say I'm not working with any descriptions, I could remove that description column and then just work with what I need to on my sheet. So this kind of helps you concentrate on the areas that you are working with on, in this case, the OBS structure. Now, just to show you a difference for a different sheet, in my EPS, I have three mandatory columns that are required for me to work with my EPS. I need to have an EPS ID, a name, and an OBS ID. And then again, I've got those same colors going on this particular one as well. And here you can see some of the summary data that has been pulled out with my EPS. Now, again, this is informational, but sometimes it's nice to have those on your sheets. Maybe you're doing some lookups and things like that, and those could be helpful. Now, the idea is that I'm going to take this information that I've pulled out and I'm going to clean it up and prepare it for how I want my new database to look for the EPS and OBS structure. So I already have a sheet that I've done that with. I've taken my the names that I have pulled out and I actually renamed that column cleanup. Now, P6-Loader doesn't recognize what the cleanup header is. And so when it's loaded, it's actually just going to skip over that column. So I don't have to remove it from my sheet when I load it back in. So what I did is I actually I capitalized everything on my when I cleaned it up. And then I gave it the column header name because that's what I want to name my EPS or my OBS. Now, I also discovered that I wanted a training and sandbox EP or OBS and EPS in my database, and it wasn't there. So I've actually just added those two lines into my OBS, so I have a corresponding OBS from a responsible manager for my EPS structure. Now, on my EPS structure, I've cleaned up some of them. I've decided which ones I definitely want to have in my database, including that sandbox and that training EPS. However, there's still some things that I'm not quite ready to load in yet. I want to think about them a little more, and I want to just make sure that I want to have all those EPS elements in my database that I'm creating. But for now, I know I want these ones. So I can keep in that information in my spreadsheet. And all I need to do is leave a blank line after the rows that I want to um, load in, that I want to create. Then anything underneath that blank line is going to be ignored by P6-Loader. So that blank line tells it to stop loading there and um, and then proceed with creating what it needed to create. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to load this EPS and OBS structure. Well, first off, I need to get into the proper database. So I'm going to go into my database that I am using right now, and that is not the one there. And I'm going to sign in. And I'm going to go to the upload area. Now, this is a really simple area. Essentially, you go and you browse to the directory where your uh, file is located, you select it, and you open it. Now, if I wanted to load several of these at the same time, I could select them all and open, and it's just going to line them up and run them one after another. But I only want to load this one this time. And then I tell it to upload. It's going to go out. It's going to create that OBS and EPS structure. And then I can go into my web version of my new database and I can refresh it. It's going to go out to the database. It's going to bring in that new information that I want or that I loaded. And I'm just going to expand this all. And not only do I have my structure here, including my sandbox and my training, but I also have that corresponding OBS structure with it. So this would be a very fast, very easy way for those of you who do spin up multiple databases to create that database very quickly. I could now go in, I could uh, use my security profiles, I could use my users maybe in another database and continue and load those all in. So pretty easy to spin up a database in this respect. Now, another thing that I do want to show you kind of, and this is kind of in the at the administrative level that I'm talking about now. I talked about that rolling down activity codes. So I have an activity code, or I have a project here that has some activity codes that are obviously you can see they're really messy. Let's face it, they're really messy. I've got two equipment codes that actually are the same code, but in this case, one is at the global level and one is the EPS level. So they have been created independent of each other. I also have a specification code that is both at the global level, but apparently one was created, someone didn't realize there was one already there and created it again. So what I need to do is to essentially combine these codes into one code, but I want to keep the values assigned in my project. Now, I also have a phase code that's at the global level, and I really just don't need that phase code at the global level. That's actually pertinent to the EPS that this project is in. So I want to push that down to the EPS level so that the projects in this EPS can utilize this code. I also have a work order code that is at the that level as well, at the global level. And really, the work order is only pertinent to my project. So I want to push that down to my project level. Now, the way I can do that is by using my activity code roll down sheet. And this is one of the utilities that I spoke about when we were looking at the extraction page. Um, In this example, I have my phase code, and remember that was global, but I want that to be an EPS level code. So I'm going to tell it I want it to be EPS. I'm going to rename it as phase new, so I know that that has actually occurred. And then I'm going to assign it the EPS ID that I want it associated with. On my equipment, I want that equipment code to be at my EPS level. So I'm going to take these two um, separate lists, one at the global, one at the EPS, and I'm going to name them the same name and say I want that to be an EPS code. So that's going to take that code, it's going to combine it, and it's going to rename that code to equipment, and it's going to assign it to the EPS of this P6 load demo. Now for my specs, I also want to combine those. So I'm going to combine those into one name. I want to assign that to the project level. And so I'm going to identify the project that I want it to go with. And then for my work order, I'm just going to keep my work order name in this case, but I'm going to roll it down to that project level. I'm going to give it the project that I want it associated with. Now this last column here indicates to P6-Loader what I want to do with that original code. So maybe on my phase and my equipment and my specs, I actually want to just ensure that I have taken care of all of the other projects that have this code assigned to them. So I want to maintain that for now. And I'm going to analyze those a little bit more before I decide to delete them. Now I know this work order one is by itself. It is the only one that and it's this is the only project it's associated with. So I am going to tell P6-Loader that I just want to remove that work order from that level. So it's not going to be a global code anymore. It's only going to be a project code. So let's go ahead and load this up and see what it does for us. And I need to again get in the right database because I'm back in my demo 2020. I'm going to browse to the file, select it, and upload it. So it's working on moving those codes and reassigning them at this point. So if I go back to P6, it's finished and I can refresh my data here. So we can see those codes are no longer assigned on my project. So let's go and find those new codes. So here's my equipment and here's my phase. And then at the project level, I have my specs and I also have my work order. So I don't have my work order note at my global level anymore. So it did remove that from the global level. So now when I go in and I look at my phase, that is my new phase at the EPS level, it is assigned and has been pushed down. My equipment and my specs have been combined, reassigned, and pushed down. And then, of course, here is my work order that is only a project code now. So I've dealt with all of those codes in different areas and put them where I need them to be, without having to create and reassign manually all of those codes and values. Okay. So I have kind of a larger load that I want to take a look at here. And this load is going to address a lot of the elements that are used in creating a project. So you may or may not need all of this information when you are, and you may not be loading it all at the same time, but you certainly can do it at the same time. So I have a project that I'm going to be creating, and I need to have a whole bunch of different data pieces that go along with this project. One of them is my resources, and I have a parent resource called P6-Loader that I'm going to populate with the resources I need as I'm developing this project. Now, in my activities, of course, I don't have any WBS. I don't have any activities. Basically, nothing is set up. And so I want to create everything I need for my project in this load. So let's go and take a look at what this load might look like. So, first of all, you usually want to create a WBS. I've got some things, some uh, WBS that have been provided to me. These are some of the ones that we're going to need for this project. I'm able to create some parent-child relationships so I can nest these. I can create some hierarchy. And so I've got my milestones, my project controls. I've got mining with some children. I've got extraction with some children. And I've got my upgrader with some children. And everything that I need to have to create these WBS is included in my sheet. Now, along with this project, I have some activity codes that I need to create. So I need my discipline, my area, and my work package. These are going to be new, and I want them to be project codes for my project that I'm working with. Now I set them up here, and on my activity code uh, sheet, this is where I actually assign the values. So again, I can set them up with values. I can do a hierarchy with them, and I can see that I have values for my discipline, my area, as well as my work package. So these are the codes, or the values, the dictionary that I'm creating with this sheet here. Now on my activities, this is going to allow me to decide which WBS I want these activities to be going to. It's going to allow me to give it a name, tell it what project. I've also used some of the functionality in Excel to help me build my activity name. So I have this title column that, again, P6-Loader does not recognize titles, so it's just going to skip over this column when it loads. But I'm also utilizing my area and my work package code. So I'm assigning those here, but I'm also going to use them to build my name of my activity. So I'm going to make this all uppercase, and I've concatenated G, H, and I to create my name. Now, with P6-Loader, I don't have to copy and paste values in order for P6-Loader to load the values. P6-Loader will take the result of any function in P6 or in Excel and load the values instead. So you don't have to worry about copying and pasting values there. And you can also see that not only have I done some project codes here, assign those, but I've got some global codes that I'm using. I can also assign user defined fields, the type, the status. So anything you're going to want to set on that activity, you're able to do in P6 Loader as well. Now, I also need to put some expenses onto some of my activities. So I'm going to create some expenses, and I need to utilize a cost account structure for my project. And this is a new one that I need to also create. So I have my cost account, and I have my cost account structure that I'm going to load in with its hierarchy and create that so that I can use that for my project. I also have some steps that I am going to utilize here. And in this case, it looks like I've got steps that are kind of iterative throughout a couple of my activities. So again, I could certainly use the copy and paste features of Excel to put those in there, and then I could just change my um, activity ID to make sure that it goes into the right activity and that I can create it. So just another way that you could use some of the Excel functionality to help you out when you're creating these. Now, one thing that I really like is that we can handle calendars. Now, if you have a basic calendar, it's not usually a big deal to create them in P6. However, in my case, I have a rotating calendar, and this rotating calendar is 10 days on and 4 days off. The problem with a calendar of this nature is that if when you are setting it up in P6, you're needing to count and click those boxes and set up what type of time it is. And if you miscount, it can be very hard to get that straightened out. And sometimes you don't even realize that you've miscounted. And so your calendar gets messed up, so to speak. So with a calendar, I'm going to create a resource calendar. You create your calendar and put in those days for the or those hours for the month, day, year. Then on the weekday, you signify which day of the week as well as the hours per day that this calendar could work. And then we have an exception. So this is where it becomes really easy to be able to do like a rotating calendar. We have, um, I'm using the functionality again in Excel to help me out. I have my first date that's going to be off, and then I use a calculation or a formula to calculate those next days that need to be off. Then on my second set of days off, I've actually still am using uh, a formula. So I'm taking that last day off and I'm adding 11 days to it to start my next set of days off, and then so on and so forth. So I can actually set these out very meticulously and let Excel calculate those days for me. No clicking and holding down my control key and selecting those days that need to be non-work days. So this makes it really easy. This is also really nice if you are creating a holiday calendar, because you can actually just copy and paste those calendar days into this exception date, and it's going to be very easy to populate that holiday calendar. Now, I also have found that I need to create a resource code. So I've got a contractor resource code that I need to establish, and I'm going to populate it again with some hierarchy here. And now I am going to start building out my resource library. So, of course, this is going under my P6 loader. I'm giving it some hierarchy as well. I'm assigning that calendar that I just created in those previous sheets, and I'm also assigning again some codes for this for these resources. So once I have resources, of course, I'm going to want to assign those to some of my activities. So I have my resource assignments sheet. So I'm identifying my project, my activity. I can assign my resource ID, a role ID, cost accounts. I can even start doing some planning as I am loading those in. So I can automatically start my planning as I'm assigning these resources. And then, of course, if I have other things that I need to designate when I assign those resources, I have that ability as well. Now, a project is not a project unless it has some relationship ties in it. So, with relationships, all I need to do is set my predecessor and my successor, give it a type, relationship type that I want. And then if I need to assign lag to it, I can also assign that lag. Now, the one great thing about P6-Loader is that I can actually handle cross-project relationships with P6-Loader, because you'll see that I have not only my activity ID, but I also have a project ID. So I can designate the project and the activity ID, and then the cross project that I want to associate or to tie it to as its successor as well. So this is really nice if you are importing projects and you need to retie those key milestones into your main project. This is a great way to do that because you can maintain what those relationships are and then reload them every time you get those in. So the last thing is dealing with rates. So we can deal with any resource rate, and that includes doing a resource shift. So you can see I've got a 7 o'clock shift, a 7 a.m. shift, and a 7 p.m. shift. And so I've got all those designations and definitions for each one of those prices in my database my um, for my resources here. All right, so I'm all ready to load this up. And like I said, you won't necessarily be loading this all at one time, but you can. So I'm going to go to my upload. I'm going to browse to that project that I just showed you that I'm going to create. And I'm going to go ahead and load all of that information in so that I have all those pieces for my project. Now, it doesn't take long to do the majority of these loads. It all depends on, of course, how many rows you have, how many sheets you have, and things like that. But for the most part, it's pretty quick on establishing um, those new elements or editing when you load a sheet in. Okay. So I've got my project all set out. I've got activity names. I've got calendars assigned. I've got my durations. I've even got my activities with steps in them. I have my logic established. I have resources created and assigned. I've also got my cost accounts and I've got my budgeting all done in one fell swoop. If I go over to my resources here, I can see that those resources have been loaded along with that calendar that I had established at that point. I also have my roles that have been assigned to them, and everything else that I actually had there. So really, we've got everything we need touching the data that we need in P6 with P6-Loader. Okay. Um, So the next one I want to show you is working with baselines. So with baselines, we can pull out the baseline projects or baselines with the project. So when we do that, what I can see here is I'm actually going to pull out those. I'm going to put some added work into my baseline, um, some found work. And then I also found that I need to redistribute some units and costs in my already established baseline snapshot that I already have. So I'm going to pull these out. And here I'm going to, no, I hate when it does that. Okay. Between 1520 and 1540, I'm going to put some added work in. And then we'll be able to see uh, in these other columns. Oh, I guess I need to change my layout so we can see everything here. And then we're going to be able to see some variances that were loaded as well. So I've pulled out my baseline and my baseline activities, and you can see that they have a project ID, this in this case B1. So with my found work, I am going to add it to both the project and the baseline. Obviously, I'm not going to add any costs or units with that. It's just found work. And then I'm going to redistribute between 50/60 and 50/80. I'm going to debit and credit 90 dollars as well as 1 unit. And then at 1060 and 1080, I am going to credit and debit those for $180 and then 2 units each there. So essentially, again, I used the functionality in PC or in Excel. I used a formula. This was my original that I pulled out. This was my difference, and then I am adding them together and loading that new value with the help of P6 or with Excel calculating that for me. So I'm going to go ahead and load that. I just noticed that we're kind of getting a little short on time, so I'm going to try to speed it up a little. And when it's done, I can refresh. Okay. And now I can see here's my found work, my added work. And then I've got my debits and my credits on those activities. So it's changed in both the project, or it's changed in not the project, but in the baseline itself. Now, quickly, I do want to visit some updating, and I'm going to try to do this fairly fast. So, apologies if if I do go too fast. I'll try not to. So, I'm going to work with 2 projects, and what I want to do is these are projects that I have pulled out the data for um, in my in P, with P6 Loader to send out to those team members that are going to update progress. Now, in this, I like to show that we do have some options um, when we extract on some of the sheets. So I have a definition which you can save. You can put up. You can set up different types of definitions and then reuse them over and over. So I have one called project updates here. And so I'm going to load that up and we're going to take a look at what this is defined as. So when I load that, I can see that I'm going to pull out activity information. So in my activity information, I can go out and I can decide on my sheet what I want to include when it's pulled out and what I don't want it to include. So just like P6, on the left is what would be available, and on the right is what I'm actually going to utilize, what I'm going to pull out, those pieces of data in my sheet. Now, I also have the option of deciding if I want any UDFs at all. In my case, I don't want UDFs, and I also don't want codes. So I don't have any codes going in there as well. Now, I do have those two projects that I'm working with. So I'm going to pull out data from both projects. And then the idea is that I'm going to then send this sheet out to my team members that need to update those activities. They're going to update them and they're going to send them back to me. So I have a sheet that is already sent back. So when they sent it back, they've told me that what the status is. They've given me a percent complete. They've given me an actual start in this case, and I have some that are also in progress here. So the fields or the columns that I displayed for them are columns that are going to be useful. So I have my actual start date. Of course, they're going to want to fill that in if it's been started. Actual finish if it's been finished. I've also put in my planned start and my planned finish. The reason being is that this is what was supposed to happen. And so it might be as easy as for them to copy and paste that into the actual start. So I've kind of given them some tools to help them out. Now, in this case, I also needed to do some uh, planning into some financial, or not planning, some actuals into my financial periods. And in this case, I'm using my actual units. So on my first activity, this or this FS spread one, I had this resource working 2 different months in it. And so I want to load those into those 2 different months. Now on my F spread 3, I actually had all of the work done in June, but I'm going to it needs to be loaded for each one of those resources in there. So we can also do some what we call, I guess, some financial period loads as well. So I'm going to go ahead and load that in really quickly, trying to get this fit in so that we can have just a little bit of wrap up. And then I'm going to upload. And refresh. Okay, let's try again. Doesn't look like it loaded for me. Let me just reload that and make sure that I get that out there. Or it could be that I'm hurrying and it's not going to work for me. That's always what happens. Okay, for some reason I am not refreshing, so I apologize for that. It does look like I've got something in here though. All right, so I've got some actual units Oh, I know what the problem is. I don't have the correct layout. I apologize. That's what, hurrier I go, the behinder I get.
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe it's layout. Yeah,
It
you
is.
got
It
it.
is the
Perfect.
layout. Okay. So I've got my completed milestones here. I've got my in progress activities. And on my activities, I can see where I had the one where I had the three resources that had units in June. And then I do have the two different financial period amounts or units for my earthworks on my first activity. So I know that was kind of quick. So please, if you have questions, let me know. Either chat them or put them in the question area, and I'd be happy to address them before I actually stop sharing my screen.
So right now, I don't think we have any questions. So hopefully people were able to follow the idea. So again, if you've used P6, the idea here is to allow you to manipulate a lot of the data much more readily, much cleaner. Today, I was working with a client that wanted to copy. They have a framework for their work orders to come into different projects by geographical area, and they're dividing one area into two areas. So we use P6-Loader to get the project list, because the list is the same, customer work, or whether it's overhead or underground, this sort of thing. So we use P6 to copy the list of projects, because we didn't want to take the list of all the work inside the project, because that is massive, massive. And we just wanted the list of projects. So we use P6-Loader to take that out. We did a search and replace in Excel to change the area from one area to the next. So it was a name change, it was some code changes. And we were able to do that very quickly and grab the template that they use for those types of projects. So that's something Sue didn't show you particularly, but we can copy templates when we create projects. So another one of our clients, as an example, they had a list of projects that they got from Excel, because they were doing all their project management in Excel, but they wanted to create all those projects in P6. And we had a special template with standard WBS formats, and we made hundreds of projects in less than 10 minutes with the standard WBS. Okay, so all sorts of examples that we can give you on how quick these things can be. Okay, we do have a quick question. What options P6-Loader give us that we cannot have through import export by Excel? Okay, so that is a good question. So just understanding the differences of what's available. So global data is the first thing that I would say, okay? Very hard to import and export and manage in P6. So that's one thing. The next thing to keep in mind is if you're pulling out more than one project, the export takes those into two different sheets inside of P6. So if you needed to clean up 10, 20 projects, you're going to get 10, 20 sheets. So that's the second one. Sue, anything else jump to mind as to key differences? I mean, to me, there's a lot more, but those are the two biggies.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are the two big ones. That global data, especially,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. And then just in terms of what we can actually manage, okay, financial periods, for example, or the way we take the data out, because we merge different functions into one sheet. So the other one is the roll downs and roll downs of codes, code management. We've got special functions inside of there. So there's a lot of different facets that we have that P6 out of the box import export do not do. Okay, so hopefully I tackled that question. Okay, so let me go ahead and take the screen back, and we can wrap up. And if you do have questions, throw them in, and Sue can answer them. Okay, maybe you can reply to that one in the question too, Sue, while I close out. I
Okay.
replied to it verbally, but you can maybe reply to it if you know what I mean in the actual response section. Okay, so I think I did mention that we're on version 12 of P6-Loader. So we've got a lot of functionality. So this might help answer the last question as well. There are a lot of things that we can do, like XCR cleaner, XCR converter, activity code roll down I mentioned, running job services. So we can execute functions inside of P6. So this goes way beyond importing and exporting. Calendar roll downs, layout and report transfers. So this can be fantastic. If you're trying to clean up your database, you've got tons and tons of layouts. We can push layouts between two different databases. Okay, so you get them cleaned up and you push only the clean ones. And database backup. So that's a key feature that we added in this new version, particularly for folks who are up in the Oracle Cloud. If you've got your P6 up in the P6 SaaS cloud, dealing with backing up of your global data, dealing with backing up and restoring the data, project data, is not as user-friendly as it would be if you were managed in our cloud and or in your own internal environment. Okay, so if you've ever had someone delete a global code, something like that, you know that that can be quite a painful experience. So we've added great functionality on backups. So if you're in the Oracle Cloud, reach out and we can discuss that further. And there is actually a video on our YouTube channel for that. So that's another thing, if you're interested in that you can take a look at. So yeah, we've got a lot of different features that go far, far beyond the importing and exporting. Okay, so I think I've touched on all that. So let me go ahead and start wrapping up. So some of the benefits and some of the return on investment is time saving. Okay, so if you have something that you can do in 5 minutes instead of an hour, that can really be a huge impact to your bottom line. So most of the clients that buy P6-Loader, that's the exact reason that they were able to get some funds to buy the tool. It's because they could show their management team that they would save money ultimately. And here are some examples of the kinds of things that people say. Okay, so importing work packages, if you're a turnaround scheduler, you can get them ready months in advance in Excel and then run them in. Okay, and it makes a big difference. And I have worked on a turnaround where we were brought in 2 weeks before the turnaround to build the whole schedule, which was crazy. And it was a lot of work. And it would have been nice to have something like Loader at the time. We didn't have that tool at the time. So we were doing 90-hour weeks to try and get the data in manually. It was painful. Accessibility. Okay, so reattaching hundreds of baselines to projects. So this is if you're moving up to the Oracle Clouds and you want to do some cleanup. It's not easy to migrate your baselines and create your EPS nodes, OBS nodes, and things like that. So huge time saving on accessibility. Okay. Let's just see. So we talked about cost, as I mentioned. So the way we sell the tool, it's on a subscription basis, and it's based on the volume of data that you're going to do. So it's not by the number of users, it's by the volume of data. So if you're a small group, probably our standard package would be appropriate. If you're a much larger group with integrations and so on, our professional or our corporate package would probably make more sense. And of course, the security, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, so we can actually import, export, and manage user profiles. So that's another thing that's not that easy to do with P6. And we do adhere to all security as well. Okay, so keeping the data clean, so reporting is reliable, reporting across projects is reliable. That's a huge, huge benefit. If any of you are using things like Power BI to report, you should take a look at our P6 reporter, because we automate that function very, very nicely with our reporter engine. But keeping data clean so you have consistent reporting is huge, and P6-Loader does a big job there. Okay, I think I've given you some ideas. We've got tons of customer feedback on this tool, lots and lots of quotes, and we've got people using it in every part of the world at this point. Okay, we've got lots of clients. So this is a sprinkling of clients that are using it now or have used it for certain reasons, and the bulk of our clients are repeat customers. They've been using it for many, many years. Okay, so I think that gives you a good flavor. So I do want to thank you for spending the last hour and a bit with us. Hopefully you saw some ideas, food for thought. And I just wanted to highlight, this is just one of many tools that Emerald has. As I mentioned, we've got our P6 reporter, P6 scrubber to help you import XERs or XML files. We've got our CAPS tool for updating, our TAPS tool for updating. That's fantastic with barcodes. So if you do a lot of large projects or turnaround projects, that's a good one to take a look at. We've got a P6 QA tool that lets you critique your schedules or schedules you receive from contractors very quickly. And you don't need any third-party add-on other tools that only your senior scheduler would use. Okay, so we've got a great toolkit. And if you're using P6 a lot, it would be definitely worth your while to look at some of our upcoming webinars and see whether there's other tools that could really make your use of P6 better, more cost effective, bring more value to your company. And I think we've got the best toolkit out on the market of add-ons to P6. And it came with many years of experience. We're in our 28th year as Emerald. And before that, the owners who created Emerald had used P3. I hate to tell you, that's how old I am, and SureTrack as well. Okay, so we had a lot of experience, and we worked in construction claims and disputes. So lots of background on how to manage data better using P6, and that's why we've got such a great toolkit. So I don't see any more questions just now. If you have any, go ahead and send them in. Here's, if you don't think of them now and you want some interaction with us, you've got Sue's email there. You've got Donna's numbers in Philippines, and she can throw her email in to the chat room. If you're in closer to her area in APAC, definitely you can reach out that way as well. Okay, so I'll stop the recording here.